Hello, I'm Dan Mahalio,
Annie Han,
and together we are Lead Pencil Studio,
a collaborative artist team based in Seattle. At the beginning, because we were individual artists, we always have our set of ideas we wanted to work on, so we'll bring our individual sketchbooks, and it wasn't actually very helpful because then you have ownership of one idea versus he'll have ownership of the other. So now we start with a kind of a clean piece of paper. When we do drawings, we talk about the topic of drawings that we want to go after, and we have been doing a lot of traveling in the last 20 years being together, and we have catalogs of all these kind of images, so we go through them, and then we talk about actually at the beginning some words that come to our mind, and then once we decide that, we start kind of laying out on a piece of paper what we want to draw and try to correct the kind of perspectives and things through using computer. Once we feel like that's a correct size and perspective, we just start kind of begin drawing from each corners, and then we overlap each other and we do it again.
And the drawings, I think, they used to be more of a generative medium for us. So if we were thinking about making something, we might want to draw it first, sort of test out an idea and a scale and a site. More recently, we've been using drawing as just a way to think about landscape and change in history and place. So the most recent two drawings that we did are in this show, and they deal specifically with that sort of subject matter. They're not intended to be built or fabricated or constructed in any way. They're just simply a scene. I think thinking a little bit about not just the subject matter, but also point of view is always sort of interesting for us, because it's a fairly long negotiation, like maybe over a month, that we're talking about what we might draw. Whereas if you were just working alone, you might just go at it, try something and see where it goes, but oftentimes we need to talk a lot about it beforehand.
When we started out doing LiDAR project, we wanted to capture the void, the negative space. And as you could imagine, in order for you to capture the void or volume, you had to capture all the surfaces that is enclosing those void spaces.
It's a very expensive piece of equipment that we had to get permission from Leica to use, and we used it twice on two long-term residencies, one in Rome, one in New York. And so we captured everything, say, in Times Square, and then we reduced it down and took out, say, only the light poles, garbage cans, police cars, newspaper stands, barricades, and then printed those with a laser etching process inside of a crystal cube. And they're intended to sort of be seen as like a collectible item and presented in this show like they're on a vendor table like you would find in Manhattan. There are places in these great cities like New York and Rome that are monumental, and oftentimes visitors who go there would like to take a little piece of it away with them in the form of a little cast bronze Empire State Building or Statue of Liberty or the Colosseum. And so in this case, we're replicating exactly the kind of stuff that's out on the city street in New York that is not monumental, but is so much a part of your mental landscape when you visit there, in terms of the density and the incredible randomness that takes place on the city streets. Our practice is national, so I think we both feel like we could kind of live and work anywhere, but we still choose to live here because we're so enamored with the underlying landscape. One of the amazing things about being in a place that's so young is that there's an amazing photographic record, and so you can actually see the entire Seattle landscape from very, very early on go from completely native environment to completely man-made environment, and that is pretty fascinating. You don't get that with very many cities.
The climate here, I love everything about it, and so I'm sure that somehow seeps into my being as a person and my observations and thoughts. Being in this region influences me somehow, but I don't know exactly. I think people probably will be a judgment of that because they're looking at your work from a little more of a distance than I am.
So I think to that degree that we are interested, we do respond to the Northwest landscape, but it isn't, I think, the primary driver. We're primarily interested, I think, in space and architecture and its impact on the land.